Okay, so normally I'd have a script for this intro, but this is not the case because I want to talk about the Colorado Rockies, my favorite baseball team, because good Lord, man, it's bad. They are currently 1-6, and they just finished their first two series in which they got completely embarrassed beyond a magnitude, including in their very first game, giving up 14 runs in the third inning. Let me rephrase. An MLB team gave up 14 runs in one inning. Like, to say this team is an embarrassment to the state of Colorado isn't saying enough. I mean, you look at it. I mean, the Nuggets just won a championship this past year. The Avalanche won the championship 2 years ago. And the Broncos, well, they're trying. I can give them that. Anyways, I'm going to go cry now before this turns into a Rockies rant. Just roll the intro.
Coming to you from this undisclosed location, it's the That's My Take podcast with Aiden Rouse.
Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to the That's My Take podcast, the podcast where you can listen to a guy talk to himself for about 10 minutes, give or take. I'm your host, Aiden Rouse, the leader of the just-formed coup d'etat against Rockies owner Dick Monfort to get him to sell the team. Still not over it. But anyways, I got a good show for you here today. As we talk about some NBA basketball, even though it's March Madness and some, other events going on. Why am I talking about NBA basketball? I really don't know. But it has to do with a particularly disturbing trend that's been going around as of late and the impacts it could have on basketball media and general basketball talk. So let's just jump right into it.
The defense is not existent.
Now, if you've been on any sort of form of social media with an NBA community on it, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, X. Anyways, you've probably become aware of a trend that's popped up called We Done with the 90's, in which it sounds exactly what the title is. It's basically a lot of people going into the past, into these highlights and full games of 1990's NBA basketball, and them basically coming to the realization that, hey, the 90's weren't as good as the old heads hype it up to be. In fact, it was terrible basketball. And they made some pretty bold claims based off of that, like the defense was non-existent, that a lot of the players were just glorified plumbers, and that perhaps even Micheal Jordan, the GOAT of basketball, wasn't really that good at basketball, which, yeah, it still is ridiculous. Sorry to break it to y'all, but Micheal Jordan was in fact pretty good at that whole basketball thing. But I bring this up for one reason. It's a really interesting trend that I feel like has really culminated from a lot of different factors I'm going to discuss later in the show. But I want to start off by just simply discussing two main claims themselves. The first one was that the defense was non-existent, in which, yeah, I got to be honest, it's a solid claim to make. I mean, you look back on those defenses, it's mainly about how tough they were and how they actually got physical with the offense, but really it was just a lot of hard, flagrant fouls and not really like genuine lockdown defense. It was more, I mean, you could say, oh, look at how much lower the final scores were, but that was more a result of offensive players back then not being as skilled as they are today. But the other big one I want to dive into is that Micheal Jordan didn't have a left hand. While I do agree with the take that the defense was not existent, this one, once again, was just absolutely ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying this because I personally think Micheal Jordan is the GOAT, but it's just an easily disprovable fact. I mean, I'll give the LeBron fans this. If you go back early into Jordan's career, yeah, he didn't really use the left side of the court that much. He didn't really use his left hand, but crazy idea and all, but players actually improve and, practice. So by the time he did really hit his stride in the NBA and started winning all those championships, he really started using his left hand. He was just as good with his left hand as he was with his right hand. And I mean, shoot, it's a bit of a wild claim to make. And even now, when you really think about it, when you kind of realize people making that claim, Micheal Jordan didn't have a left hand, they're really either saying, A, Micheal Jordan won, 10 scoring titles and 6 titles with only his right hand, which, I don't know about you, that just sounds like some GOAT stuff to me. It's either that or they just cherry-picked highlights and that Jordan didn't have a left hand. And spoiler alert, it is the latter.
We done with the 90's. MJ is trash.
Now, I feel like I really came to a revelation when I was researching this topic, and the big revelation I feel like I came to is that I feel like among the NBA community, there's a real lack of respect for the game itself and for its history and for its past, its present, and its future, which is really sad to see because this really feels like a purely NBA issue. I don't really see this happen in other leagues. I don't see the newer generation go in and try to trash highlights of Barry Sanders or Walter Payton. This feels like a purely NBA issue. And I feel like a big part of that was, there's really two factors I feel like that have really played into that level of animosity that has sparked this trend. The first one is the player-focused marketing that the NBA has implemented since the 90s. It feels like the NBA for a while now has been more focused on marketing the players themselves instead of the teams and the game, which is something that obviously you need to market the players in order to market the game, but it goes vice versa as well. You need to market the game in order to market the players, but I feel like the NBA just hasn't really caught on to that yet, or at least they haven't for a while. And that's kind of really sparked this new trend I've seen with the NBA where there's a lot of people who are purely fans of particular players instead of teams straight up. And it's kind of created this complex of there's a lot of NBA fans who may not really be basketball fans. And now it just all of a sudden feels like they're more glorified WWE fans than anything, which again is really sad to see because I want them to get into basketball. But the NBA feels like they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot by creating that type of fan, by advertising Kevin Durant versus LeBron James instead of the Lakers versus the Suns, or Steph Curry versus Nikola Jokic instead of the Nuggets versus the Warriors. But the other one is one that's way more applicable to sports media in general, and that is the rise of take culture. You look at shows on ESPN and Fox Sports like First Take and Undisputed, Get Up, those shows that are very roundtable debates about sports. And when you look at the NBA, a lot of the topics they cover are very player focused again. And a lot of it just has to do with hot takes. Like they make these hot takes that give them this short-lived clips and controversy that gets people talking for a short while, but it's never really been. It's a very short-term profits over long-term gains mindset. But the level that we've seen from analysts like Stephen A. Smith, Kendrick Perkins, Skip Bayless, and seeing how viral they've gone with their takes, like saying Nikola Jokic is a stat pattern. Seeing stuff like that has those types of takes have really helped create more animosity because now it feels like people are kind of being forced to take one extreme side or another, and that's helped develop those people who may side with one side of the argument into creating even more extreme opinions. Like, for example, saying Michael Jordan played against plumbers or that Michael Jordan didn't have a left hand. And it's really sad to see that that's what NBA media has become.
MJ played against plumbers. We done with the 90s.
Now, why do I bring this up? Well, it's because, like I said, we done with the 90s, whether you think it's a serious take or you think it's just what I call rage bait, just intentionally trying to get boomers or Gen X up in their feelings. It really is a further symptom of a lot of what's wrong with not just NBA media, but just sports media in general. Again, take culture it prevalates more than just the NBA. It reaches into the NFL, into the NHL, and MLB, and I think we need to take We Done with the 90s and use it as a lesson to people in the future on what happens when you don't respect the game and you don't respect its legends, you don't respect those who came before you, and you don't respect those who came after you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen and non-binary friends, my name is Zane Rouse, and that's my take.